So is it an environmental issue? It is an environmental issue, but it is more than that. It not only affects the environment, but also food production, your access, our access to water and energy, habitat, sea levels, temperatures, and more. So climate change and poverty has a very strong connection. This according to earthhour.org. Is it the same as global warming? Would you know if it's the same as global warming?
Is it?
Global warming is an effect of climate change. So that's why they are linked and sometimes used synonymously, but global warming is the effect of climate change. So what's causing human behavior? What people do is causing it. It's going to happen in the future. It's not my problem. Which is kind of right. But your future, they are your kids. They are your grandkids. I mean, we are going to get older. We're going to probably die in the next 70 years or so. But who's going to suffer are the children that's being born right now. So our duty as, you know, the descendants of these future generations is to prevent this from happening and to teach these kids who are going to be born or are already born, like Amale, like Dabi, 9, 10 years old, 7 years old, to tell them that you cannot do what we have done to the earth. So that is our role. So that's why it's not the problem of the future. It's our problem right now. Does it affect you? I'm in the Philippines. I mean, come on. Yes, it affects us because we are an island. We are an archipelago. We have over more than 36,000 kilometers of coastline. Climate change affects sea levels. So I think in the past few years, the Philippine sea level has already rose up by 0.5 milliliters, something like that. So yes, it affects us. This is just one effect. The rise of the sea levels. We are an archipelago. Of course, we are so prone to it. And this is just the sea level rise. This is not even the whole of it. So, examples of extreme weather events brought on by climate change. Ondoy. I mean, 6 hours of non-stop rain, 2 weeks worth of rain, funneled into one area, which is unfortunately Manila, which is unable to cope. That's an effect of climate change. Typhoon Yolanda, a super typhoon that's not normal. Typhoons are normal in the Philippines, right? We experience typhoon. I mean, we eat we eat typhoons for breakfast, but come on, Yolanda was not a breakfast typhoon. So this is an example of an extreme weather event caused by climate change. The Kidapawan protest might seem like, oh yeah, that's political, that's, caused by the leftist group. But it's brought on by the drought caused by climate change. Droughts are normal, but they are occurring more frequently now. We have always had droughts, but the droughts are occurring in an unprecedented level. Like, more droughts are happening now, and we couldn't cope. So, see, climate change affects politics. It affects economics. So, in that drought, in the North Cotabato drought, this is from one of the daily broadsheets, I think, from Inquirer. The mass demonstration that killed at least 2 happened because farmers in North Cotabato were not adequately cushioned against the blow of drought that crippled their farmlands and rendered them incapable of earning living through farming. So climate change brings on food insecurity. Food insecurity leads to protests. These protests can bring down a society. So you see the correlation. So it is our problem. It is a problem that's happening now. It is a crisis that must be stopped now. Is it only the government's responsibility? What do you think? JP,
No, miss.
why?
Kay kita na po yung napunta sa
That's true. Because we are contributing to each and every one of us. Every time we cook, every time we use the aircon gets electricity from the coal plants. The coal plants are so harmful to the environment. The more we need to make our lives more convenient, the more we are contributing to climate change. Every time we don't want to walk, we ride a jeepney or we ride a car. That's contributing. So it's not the government's problem, it's every person's problem. So these are some of the effects. And the mission of the Climate Reality Project, the organization that gave us the training, is to catalyze a global solution to this crisis by making urgent action a necessity across every level of society. So it's not only the problems of our leaders, it's also the problems of every single member of society, whether you are directly affected because you are, the people that are most vulnerable are the poor, of course. But we in the middle class, I guess most of us or all of us are in the middle class. We don't feel it as much as the poor people, but it's still our problem because we are contributing to it. So we must strive to become part of the solution. So the best way is to educate ourselves first, and then to educate the people around us within our surroundings. So this is the goal. That's why I'm giving this training so you would know and be aware. So the concrete goals is to create a healthy, sustainable, prosperous future, and the shift from dirty fossil fuels to renewable energy, and to reach a net zero carbon emission. Is it? Do you think it's impossible to reach zero carbon emission?
We have to try.
But is it possible for the Philippines?
We gotta try.
In Bhutan, this is a country also in Asia. It has 750,000 people. They are actually negative carbon because they have so many trees. So their forests are so intact that the carbon that they emit, not only, it's offsetted by the trees. Not only the trees offset their own carbon emission, but it also absorbs a lot from outside the country. So it is possible. I mean, how many Filipinos, 100 million Filipinos, if we would plant a tree? So, it is possible. So an example is Bhutan, or however you would pronounce that. So you can actually check it. It's on Facebook. You can double check that fact. How can we act? We can act in our little ways. So the climate reality leaders from the climate reality workshop in Cebu actually got together to organize this movement. It's called Cebuanas Against Coal. So Ludo Power Plant, Ludo Corporation is going to establish a 300 megawatt power plant in the middle of a highly residential area in Cebu City. This is near SRP. When you pass by the road in SRP, as soon as you get out from the tunnel, that's the area. You will see at the factory. That's Ludo. That's where they will put up the 300 megawatt power plant. We actually did an ocular we went to see the facility beside Ludo. It is an orphanage for special children run by missionary priests, Little Lamb. So this is Ludo, the corporation. There is not even an easement. There, like of just a few inches or a few feet is the house of the orphanage for special children. So every day, these children experience the noise pollution, the smell coming from that Ludo factory. How much more when they establish their own coal plant? So this is just, this is one of the ways where we can stop climate change from happening. Look in our own surroundings, what's happening in our city, what's happening in our barangay, what's happening in our community. So there were like 1,000 residents of Sawang Calero signed a petition to stop it from happening, but money talks. So the issue keeps on dragging. So even though there's a public referendum, the public says no. I mean, if you have billions, Ludo Corporation is asking for a 2.8 billion loan from a bank to start this project. So if you have billions of money, I mean, that's so easy to go to every barangay and oh, there is 1,000 people against, I can get 10,000 for I have billions. So look in your barangay, what's happening, and see if you can do something. So that's what we're doing right now. The Cebuanos Against Coal. The campaign is No to Coal and the shift to 100% renewable energy. Renewable energy, that's the solar, that's the wind power. Because coal plants are really so harmful. Coal plants are using fossil fuels. These fossil fuels have been stored billions of years in the Earth's crust, and you take them out to use them for energy. I mean, that's not good for the environment, harmful for humans, for animals, for plants. So this is the climate reality. This is Al Gore. He's the former vice president of the US. He gave us the workshop, 3 days workshop. This is Dan. He's one of our friends from Cebu. This is a climate reality leader from Cebu. He got awarded the first ever Green Ring Award because of his advocacy for climate change. So he's mostly active with art activities, reaching out grassroots communities and telling them about climate change and everything. So in the 10-year history of Climate Reality Project, the only award, the first award given was to a Cebuano. Yeah, and this is Brother Tagoy. He works with University of San Jose Recoletos. So this is in recognition for outstanding work towards solving the climate crisis. There's no doubt about it, it is a crisis. It says on the award. If it says so on the award, then it is a crisis. Okay, so that's an overview. That's quite a long overview. So I'm going to start with the presentation now. If anyone is watching the live stream, if there's one person, we are really sorry we cannot show you the presentation because some of the presentation is not for viewing for public, because there are some that is only intended for an intimate audience, not for recording purposes. Okay, so let me start by showing you the logo. So this is the Climate Reality Project. So this has already been existing for 10 years. And this was founded by Al Gore. If you have seen the movie The Inconvenient Truth, so that's that guy. And let me show you this beautiful picture of the Earth rising. This was taken in the 1950s. The first ever picture taken of the Earth. That is from the space shuttle. So the astronauts just happened to look out the window and like, oh look, that's Earth. Oh, let's take a picture. So that's how it happened. This is the view of the Earth. And this is the full view of the Earth from NASA. So the Earth is round, right? What's important in this video or GIF is that the Earth has movements. There are two movements that are particularly important. So let's go a little back on elementary science. So two movements, the most important movements of the Earth is that the Earth revolves in 24 hours, right? It completes the revolution in 24 hours. Another movement, another significant movement is that it revolves around the sun and it completes in 365 days or 364 and 1/4 days. So those are the two significant movements because those movements are the movements that affect climate, weather, all these sorts of things. So it's important to note that these movements are the ones that's affected by that are the movements that affect the climate. And then over the Earth or around the Earth is a thin layer. It's called the ozone layer. It's a very thin shell. So it's not very thick, it's really thin. So as you can see here. And right now the ozone layer is already broken. Some parts of it is already, has holes. Like in Western Australia, if you go to this place and where the ozone is already broken into, there is no filter anymore. You'll get skin cancer and all sorts of things. So right now, this thin layer of ozone is actually becoming the sewer for the Industrial Revolution. It's like canal. All the negative, the bad effects, all the pollution coming out from our industries are going to the ozone layer, and it thickens it. It's supposed to be a thin shell, but right now we're making it thick because of what we're doing, riding a jeepney, cooking food, kaingin, all these things. So we have a system. We have a beautiful natural system. If we don't have the sun to give us warmth, it would be so cold to live in Earth. So we have this system. The sun radiates its energy in the form of light waves, and it passes through the ozone layer, and it gives life to everything on Earth, gives life to people, plants. Most of this radiation is absorbed and then it warms the Earth. But some of it is radiated back into space in the form of infrared waves. But some of it is trapped because the ozone layer is already too thick, right? So some of it is, it's normal actually. Some of it is normal, like when it gets trapped and it goes back to warm the Earth. But when it gets too thick, the ozone layer, nothing will go out anymore. All that extra heat will stay in the planet, and everything will keep on getting warmer and warmer. So this is how climate change affects us. So let us look at Earth in relation and its to Venus. So this is how it looks like. This is Earth with our layer, our ozone layer, and this is Venus. It's a lava land. Nothing is alive here. It's like molten rocks and everything. It's, you know. And look at their layer. It's very thick compared to our ozone layer. Now, Earth's average temperature is 15 degrees Celsius. But Venus is 465 degrees Celsius because all the heat coming from what's inside Venus cannot go out. It gets trapped. So it's already warm in the first. It's already warm by itself, but then the heat that is coming from all the everything in Venus cannot go out because of the very thick layer. That's why the normal it's like you can cook a pizza in 2 minutes in Venus with this 465 degrees Celsius. And now let's look at Mercury. Mercury is the nearest to the sun, but it is not as hot as Venus because its layer is super thin. So the heat that gets trapped from the sun can go out. So it's not as hot, but still it's not livable because it's still too hot for any living. Humans cannot live here. It's too hot. It's too hot. So Earth is just right. Earth is actually just the perfect planet. You know that story, Goldilocks, just right. So this is Earth. So this is what's happening. These the greenhouse gases are the things that are the effects of the greenhouse gases is what makes our Earth warm. So these are some of the things: coal mining, using fossil fuels, thawing of the permafrost, the icebergs. When the icebergs melts, I mean, it's been there for years, right? It's been there for millions of years, but why does it cause sea level to rise? It's because the iceberg, some of it is not in the water. It is above water. When it melts, this solid object above water melts, it turns into liquid, then the sea levels rise. So that's why. Air transport, a lot of carbon emissions, kaingin, forest burning, land transportation, landfills, industrial agriculture. Why? Is it bad? Industrial agriculture? Yeah, fertilizers is bad, but agriculture is not bad, right? We need food. I mean, it's not wrong if you have one cow in your backyard, and that's where you get your dairy. But it's wrong when you do it in an industrial scale, because you have to cut down trees, you have to use forest, this land that has trees that can absorb the carbon. You cut them down and use them to raise your cattle. So that's why it's wrong. So agriculture in a large scale is wrong. Yeah, land transportation, of course, landfills. So this is the global carbon emission from fossil fuels since the 1850s. So it started rising up in the Industrial Revolution era, which is the 1950s. So a lot of new inventions, a lot of electric powered stuff or cold power stuff got invented in this era. That's how the carbon emissions started to rise. That's when it rose so fast. 1950 until now, in the last 50 years. In the 1850s, it's very low. It's like hundreds of, or less, million metric tons of carbon. Now it's over 10 million. So the energy trapped by man-made global warming pollution is now equivalent to exploding 400,000 Hiroshima atomic bombs per day, 365 days a year. So in Hiroshima, there was only one bomb, but every day our carbon emission is equivalent to almost 500,000 per day. 400,000 times of this per day, 365 days a year. So that is the equivalent. Okay, so this is this is a graph showing the summer temperature shift. The frequency of occurrence is here. This is the level. So the blue is cooler than average, white is average, and red is warmer than average. So this is the baseline. So this is okay. This was from 1951 to 1980. So this is the normal. But look what happened after that. Oh, sorry. Let me go back. This is from, 1980. But after the 80s, this is what happened. There are lesser occurrences of cooler than average and more towards warmer and even extremely hot. So this is the pattern. Lesser, cooler than average. Now, a lot extremely hot. This is the present. Very, very few days of cool weather. More of the weather is already warmer than average or extremely hot. So that is the shift. When the extreme temperature events used to cover only 0.1%, now it's 14.5%. So maybe in the Philippines, it used to only be in one island. Now it's probably like 50 islands or something. And it's a trend. If you saw the graph, it didn't go back. It just kept on going towards extremely, extremely warm. So this is the times when there was cool weather. And this was extreme weather. So in 2015, it overshot the temperature. I mean, the graphs don't lie. This is like scientific, this is scientific basis. So 14 of the 15 hottest years on record have occurred since the year 2001. Only one occurred in the 90s, but the rest was in, 2000. 14 of the 15 highest years. And the hottest year ever measured was 2015. I mean, did you feel it last year? Very, very hot weather. Did you feel? Or no? Because you're always using aircon. Last year was the hottest year on record. Welcome, new people. So, I mean, do you see that? I mean, aren't you alarmed yet?
Not really.
I mean, look at that. I mean, last year, the hottest year on record was during our lifetime. And January 2016 was the hottest January on record. And a couple of weeks ago, the weather in Manila went up to 51 degrees Celsius. That never happens. So, January is supposed to be cool, right? Supposed to be cold weather, but last January, this year January, was the hottest January on record. And February was the 372nd consecutive month with the global temperature above the 20th century average. So for the new people, we already talked about a little bit about the science of climate change, and now we are seeing the impact. So the impact is that the scientists have found out that the hottest year on record was last year, and now it's still getting warmer. The European heat wave. Let's look at this. I mean, who would have thought in London, a cold country, would have weather such as 36.7 degrees Celsius? That is super hot for London. That's not normal. In Belgium, in France, in Germany, all over Europe. In Spain, 43, you know. In Paris, 39.7, almost 40 degrees Celsius. That is not normal for Europe because these are cold countries. In India, this is last year, 2,300 people died because of the heat wave. In Jaipur, even the monkeys, not only people, monkeys are affected as well. In Pakistan, 1,200 people died in the heat wave. In Iraq, in Iran, record-breaking heat in the summer of last year. It reached 74 degrees Celsius last year. And what's more important for us, since we live in an archipelago, is that 93% of the extra heat trapped by the global warming pollution goes into the ocean. When the oceans get heated, you know, look at this graph. It shows that the ocean is getting warmer and warmer and warmer and extremely warm at present. And half of the increase of the ocean warming occurred in 1997, since 1997. Because what happens is that when the ocean gets too hot, when it goes up, I mean, you know how typhoons are formed? Water from under, and this is not normal. The normal is like you know, the normal Philippine typhoons, the ones that we experience now every now and then. But because of the ocean warming, it creates super typhoons like Yolanda. So this is Haiyan. The sea surface anomaly was right there. So this is how strong it was. And this is the effect in Tacloban. Even the Pope went there. And the saddest part is that the gravest effects of these extreme weather events are experienced by the poorest. Because the poor are already vulnerable to start with. I mean, in Tacloban, a lot of people affected lived in the coastal areas. They were fishermen, you know, they live in barong-barong houses. In the first place, they were already vulnerable. So when extreme weather happens, like tsunamis, they are the most vulnerable. They are the ones that suffer the most. This is the memorial cemetery in Typhoon Yolanda for Typhoon Yolanda victims. And this shows the sea surface temperature anomaly. So this is the temperature. The more hot, because the ocean was was hotter than the normal. That's why it created that typhoon. This is Hurricane Sandy. And this used to be, you know, like an amusement park, but now it's underwater. In Manhattan, New York, it also happens in the best cities of the world. So this is flooding in New York. New York Federal District, right? This is Fiji, Fijian coast. This is Nakama settlement in Japan. Oh, sorry, in Fiji. Cyclone Winston was the strongest storm ever measured in the southern hemisphere. Because that hemisphere never gets typhoons, or not a lot at least. So those are the typhoon formations. The thing is, what we want to emphasize here is that extreme weather events are happening frequently now than ever before because of climate change. So this is Hurricane Kilo, Hurricane Ignacio, Hurricane Jimena. 3 Category 4 hurricanes at one time. It's never happened before. But this is happening because of climate change. This is the first ever recorded instance of 3 Category 4 hurricanes forming in this area at the same time. As temperatures increase, the oceans evaporate more moisture into the sky because it's so hot, right? So it just turns into moisture. Now this moisture goes around, and then when it meets like the wind that forms a typhoon, it becomes stronger than what it should be. And the saddest part is that because if you remember from the graph before, the hottest places used to only, extreme hot places used to only cover 1%, but now it's almost 15%. So there's more moisture now on the surface. What's sad is that when it turns into a typhoon, it only goes to one place, so it has the funnel effect. So all this moisture goes into one place. For example, it just went to Tacloban, but that moisture doesn't only come from the areas near Tacloban. It comes from a lot of hot areas everywhere. So this is why it's scary. Here's the linkage between the climate crisis and the increased frequency and severity of extreme weather events. So this is the hydrological cycle: evaporation, precipitation, and then the water returns to sea. That's the normal cycle. Warmer air can hold a lot more vapor. So with each additional 1 degree Celsius of temperature, the atmosphere's capacity to hold water vapor increases by 7%. There's already 4% more water vapor over the oceans than there was only 30 years ago. So the downpours get bigger. So the more hotter it is, the more vapor goes into the sky. And it's the easiest way to describe it is like opening a faucet in the sky. That's what happens. Global warming is contributing to an increased incidence of extreme weather because the environment in which all storms form has changed from human activities. This is a real-life storm. West Point, Nebraska. So first, the storm goes down and picks up everything from the ground, and then it throws it into an area. So that's what happened in Tacloban. Human-caused climate change is in many cases the straw that broke the camel's back, that extra fuel that takes what would have been a really bad flood and turns into a catastrophic flood. In Tucson, Arizona. You see that? It's a faucet. That's not rain, that's a faucet in the sky. like toy cars. In France, 2 years ago in France, Montpellier received 25 centimeters or 9.8 inches of rain in 3 hours. In England, in Britain still, York, England, the flood water outside. I mean, who makes these windows? It's very effective. In Germany, I mean, don't think that it only happens in small countries though. In economically strong countries, it also happens. Because climate change doesn't choose. There, you know, it's nature, so. In Georgia, it's a country in Europe. Pensacola, Florida. 61 centimeters of rain in 26 hours. Non-stop rain in 26 hours. These kinds of things happen in movies. This is like St. Andrea's Fault, but that was a movie. But it's happening in real life.
We are only about 6 to 7 miles west from Mojave Airport along Highway 58. We've been talking about this all morning long, and here's our visual of several dozen vehicles, a lot of trucks and a lot of motor vehicles that are essentially stuck in mud. Some areas of that mud definitely at least head high. So along the highway.
In California, I mean, it was a normal day. People are on the streets, and then suddenly, extreme weather. So there have been 7 1,000-year flood events in the U.S. since May of 2010. Texas. So in 2 days, 162 billion gallons of water fell in Houston, Texas, equivalent to the entire flow of the Niagara Falls for 2.5 days. In India, this is Lord Shiva. This is supposed to be a huge statue, but it got flooded. In India still, the worst rains in over 1,000 years flooded much of the Tamil Nadu state, affecting at least 2 million people. Tamil Nadu is in the south of India. 2 million people got affected. Still in India, Chennai. 14.5 inches of rain. I mean, the Philippines is not so far from this, you know. I mean, it can be the Philippines next day or next month. So this is still in India. In Lahore, 35 centimeters or 13.8 inches of rain fell in 24 hours. In northwest Pakistan 6 years ago. Pakistan. In China, this is last year in China. This was an erosion, right? Was this an erosion because of heavy rains. In Sichuan, 6 million people affected by the floods. Paraguay in Latin America. In a single day, in June 27, as much rain fell as in a normal month. So 1 month of rain fell in 1 day. So these are examples of extreme weather events in Cordoba, Argentina.
Cordoba.
Cordoba.
Cordoba. Received 32 centimeters or 12.5 inches or 1 foot, more than 1 foot of rain in 12 hours. Brazil.
Oh, no.
The dog was not recovered. In Peru, Colombia, it's happening everywhere, all over the world. So, worldwide extreme weather catastrophes. It's rising, guys. From 1980s, look at that. It just keeps on rising. There's very few when it goes down. Few years like this and this, but the trend is that it is rising. It is not going down anytime soon. And who experiences the most weather-related disasters? Per country, Myanmar, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Honduras, Guatemala, and number 1 is the Philippines. We are the country that is most at risk. This is why you need to care. Because we are situated, unfortunately situated in a, the number of weather-related major events in 2 decades, 328. This is only the weather-related major events. 328. We are at the top of the chart. In Cainta, Rizal, 7 years ago. Ondoy. In Taytay. In Taytay, there was 464 dead and 37 missing after Ondoy. In Santa Cruz Township, Pasig City, thousands lost their homes because of Ondoy. Typhoons Parma and Melor, 7 years ago. Tarlac, landslides and floods killed hundreds of people. So the fourth typhoon to hit the Philippines in a month. The most intense storm ever to make landfall. The most intense to make landfall ever. Meggy, 6 years ago. In Kalumpit,